So, welcome to the EDIC meeting of June 15th, 2021. Our plan is to have time to go through 5:15, so we have time to dig into stuff. Welcome to all of you. We are meeting in what I think for the time being will be our last fully remote meeting for a while. I don't have all of the details yet, but my understanding is that our July meeting has different rules surrounding it. So to the extent that we are able to get as many of us in person as possible, the better. And we can have remote members, we just can't have mostly remote members. So I will get more details about that to be able to be real confident, but plan on being in person in July, which will be amazing, and everybody gets candy, so fun. Oh, I just made myself a task, bring candy to July meeting. Okay. Where did Casey go? Just admitted. There he is. Okay, so our first task today is to approve the May 18th meeting minutes as well as the June 1st meeting minutes. We can do those separately, I think. We had slightly different characters at each. So has everyone had a chance to review the May 18th, 2021 meeting minutes? Hi, Casey. We're at the point of approving meeting minutes from May and from June 1. So you've had a chance to review? Okay, so do we have a motion?
Actually, I didn't notice this when I looked at them before, but I looked at them again today before this meeting, and I realized that my name is not listed as being present on either of these meetings.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I will add you to both. Sorry about that.
No big deal, you know.
So does that mean that we have to wait till July to approve those, or can we make that edit, have it saying aloud that it will say that Paul was there?
We can make the edit now, and we approve it with the edit.
Okay.
On both.
So do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I motion to approve. Oh, it's so seconded.
Great. So any further discussion about May 18th, 2021 meeting minutes? All right, all in favor, holler aye. Put up a hand, please.
Aye.
Great,
Aye.
very good. Thank you so much. I like the doubling down. So that motion passes. We've approved the May 18th meeting minutes with the edit that Paul St. Pierre was in fact in attendance. Now, have you had a chance to review the June 1st, 2021 meeting minutes? Okay. Any edits that we need to make to that? Paul, we have to add you to that as well, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Great. Any further discussion about June 1st? All right.
Wasn't there, right?
Right. So Mo, you can, what does that mean? You abstain because you weren't there.
Yes.
Yeah. So all eligible voters on June 1st, 2021, holler aye if you approve those meeting minutes. Very good.
Aye.
That motion is approved with the edit that Paul St. Pierre was in fact in attendance. What's next? What do we do next? Public speak. We don't have a member of the public currently present. However, as a member of the public and chair of this, I will say that I did forget to put an agenda item on our agenda, which was a follow-up on our conversation about the weekend bus. So we can include that, I assume, around the time that we talk about social media stuff. However, for the first time in a bit, we have our planning department chair, Jeff Bagg, in attendance, and we have an opportunity to hear what is what and how is how in Easthampton. So Jeff, would you like to share some of your favorite thoughts with us right now?
Yes, thank you. That's that might be a little overkill for the introduction, but I appreciate that. I haven't been here for a couple meetings, so it's just been a capacity issue, just so busy with a lot of stuff. I think I wanted to try to update on three things real quick. A couple, I think Mo and Gwen were at, we had a meeting last week for the local rapid recovery plan. So it's okay that people weren't there. I'm trying to get ready to post a video of the meeting. It's about 45 minutes. It wasn't a terribly long meeting. It's a lot of data that has been collected in kind of phase one of the project. I think it will be important for members of this committee to watch the video when you have a chance, because it really is going to set the stage for the project to go into phase 2 and 3, which will be a little bit more oriented towards coming up with projects that the city and partners and entities can look at doing, to continue to respond to COVID-19. And the project list, once it gets formulated, will be really important for us. It'll be established in a report. And, the goal is to have these, kind of a long list of projects that we've vetted through this public process that then we can work towards aligning with funding to actually do them in the future. And that seems to be how the state is kind of positioning this program, is for the communities that did the planning work. We don't know if it's going to be automatically eligible, but we're supposed to be more eligible for funding to tackle projects on the list. So, you didn't really miss anything. There's a lot of data. They did a robust kind of collection of data across the downtown district, including the mills. I'll be posting some information, a link to the video and the slides on the planning department's Facebook page, and then it'll also be on the planning department's website. And then Mo has been our partner in this, so the chamber will probably share or link out that same information. So that's one thing. The second thing I wanted to share was about the school reuse project. So it seems on one level to be dormant, but it's actually, I'm scurrying around constantly trying to get us bits and pieces of that project kind of moving. There will be a committee formed by the mayor, probably summer or fall. But in the lead up to that, I've been working really hard to align that project with the state has a new program for grants. It's like a consolidation of 8 or 10 grant funding sources into one place, and they called it the One Stop for Growth. And what I've been really working on is putting our project into a development continuum. And that's really like some lingo that they're talking about, is trying to get projects to shovel ready. And to do that, you backtrack quite a ways. This is something that the state hinted at this quite a while ago. So all of my efforts have been kind of to get us ready. This is a big project for Easthampton. But what we did is, it goes back to the downtown strategic plan, was the community planning exercise that we did to look at the downtown, look at the schools. We have a list of desirable uses, and that's the community planning element. Then we're in this stage now of the RFP and doing due diligence and trying to gather information about the schools, and then we'll hopefully, seek redevelopment by a developer. So we applied for a grant from the One Stop for Growth for the middle ground here. So we have a consultant on board to help us with the RFP. And at the same time, it really occurred, to me and to a small group, that we could be doing things to help inform a developer who will ultimately respond to the RFP. So things like existing conditions surveys of the school properties are going to be things that every developer is going to want to know, do we have a survey? And currently the answer is no. So we're asking for funding so we can do existing condition survey, so it shows where the buildings are, where the parking is, curbs and utilities. We're also going to try, where we have applied for funding to do what's called a phase 1 environmental report. And so that looks at the outside of the site to make sure there's no contamination. It would also look in the buildings for asbestos and lead, which, same thing, if you're a developer, one of the first questions will be, is there any lead or asbestos in that building? And so we're hoping to identify that, we're hoping to identify that up front. Then the other two components are like a structural analysis just to make sure. I mean, our kids are in there, but to make sure that it's structurally sound. And then they will also do a code review, which is to look at, okay, so you have a school use, what kind of code requirements would be triggered? And we're going to ask for three things, which is straight housing, mixed use, so mixed housing and commercial, and then kind of like just commercial and mixed commercial. Those are really important things that we hope to be able to do as the city, package up and have it available for a developer. We really modeled a lot of this as we learned from Ferry Street. These are all things that a developer literally made the very first questions that they asked for. And so I've been gearing up to run our RFP process with this due diligence and have the due diligence available publicly on a website that any developer who would be responding to the RFP would be able to look at all this information. So those are all things that will make us closer to shovel ready. So I will get a copy of that grant application out to this group. We just submitted it like 2 weeks ago, and basically it was a giant sigh of relief that we got it in. And just the last piece of this, if we get it, so there's a big if, but we also would want funding for someone to come in and do survey of the surrounding neighborhood. So the sidewalks, the street, the underground utilities, because what that would do is that would give us this baseline information to look at where we might want to upgrade crosswalks or sidewalks or add on-street parking. So we need all of this to be ready for like a mass works grant, just like we did for Ferry Street. We would have this plan that once we have a developer, we would then have this plan that we would apply for funding to upgrade. The narrative is along the lines of, these are 100-year-old schools. They've only been used for schools. There is no upgraded infrastructure around those schools. So we really need to be preparing to kind of support a development of those properties by public infrastructure upgrades. So that's kind of we're asking for $100,000 to do, that due diligence over the next year. And that will hopefully line us up with the RFP to be released in like a year or less. So that's a big project. And then the last thing, Gwen, if I could, will you let me share my screen? It's a project that we talked about quite a while ago, the Wayfinding. And of all the things that happened during the pandemic, this one definitely slowed down, but we are going to ramp it back up. And the next step for this project will be to convene kind of a medium-sized group of Easthampton stakeholders. So we're not necessarily doing a community meeting, but we want to have these stakeholders from different sections of town to look at the preliminary design. And then we will send it to city council to kind of get their blessing. And then we want to gear up towards getting cost estimates for constructing things. So I'm going to show a quick image of what we're currently looking at. And then probably in July, I would invite everyone of this group and other people to a Zoom meeting where we can look at this and talk about some of the details, but this is just a preview. So let me just fish around here for, can everyone see this? I know it's going to be kind of small in this format, but we have a small working group who's been working on this periodically over the last year. And it became clear to the small group that Mount Tom as a backdrop is really this iconic thing for Easthampton. And we took it a step further to show the pond and the bottle. So going way back, this is kind of a really iconic image for Easthampton. And the idea, it's going between the lingo and the terminology is a little bit different in this slide, but the idea would be we have to flesh out talking about going to places, which are kind of shown on this one, or and then we have these little icons that we're building off of the ECA map that's been kind of the foundation of this. So we have to flesh out more, but this one shows places and it would direct you as a person entering Easthampton. And then the other one, I'll just preview real quick, is different. And of course I'm going to lose it here. Let's see.
I love the colors on that, and it's so obvious that that is the view of Mount Tom from the pond. It's lovely.
Yeah, and so there's still a lot of debate and discussion about finer details of it, but I think we've been pretty comfortable with this kind of being the version that goes forward for additional review and testing by other stakeholders, and then it goes to City Council for kind of a blessing. I really apologize because I had it queued up and I lost it. It's worth it if you can bear with me for 1 minute. Okay. Okay. Wow, Zoom is getting old. So this is an earlier version. So if you really caught it, the mountain, like the line for the mountain changed a little bit. This is the earlier version, but the below it was, I just wanted to show this. So this one shows the districts, which is what, when we talked about the application, this was our highest priority, was for someone entering Easthampton to be able to get to those 4 districts. And so we're kind of going between those two. But this is more than I've shown to other people. So I just wanted to kind of give this group a sneak peek at this project. It's not dead. It just really kind of hit a little bit of a lull for the pandemic. But again, sometime in July, we're hoping to convene a group, stakeholders, to just get their input on this and then kind of send it. And the goal really is to try to secure funding for installation that maybe next spring, next summer. And if I didn't already say it to this group, I mean, one of the target funding sources is cannabis money. Our dispensaries are geographically spread out pretty well, that with a real straight face, we can say that, you know, each of these dispensaries are contributing to new vehicle trips in Easthampton, and to get not just their customers, but everyone oriented. It's a really good use of that money. And so that's kind of one of the target funding sources right now to actually make this project happen. So, you know, I think this group's been involved right from the beginning, and I think I'm just optimistic because I don't see this going onto a shelf. I see this like going into production and getting installed. So those were the 3 things I wanted to give a quick update on.
Outstanding. Any questions or comments for the city planner? Tom.
Jeff, so when you talked about the schools and all the work that would go into it, the former schools, I should say, or soon to be former schools, when you're talking about structural analysis and things like that, is there a sort of preclusion that the buildings would remain? No, we haven't gotten that far. That will come out in the RFP process for sure. But I thought you were going to say something else, Tom, which is that we may have a little bit of this information for Maple Street, because Maple Street was really the impetus to evaluate and then get the funding for the new construction. So we know that we have a little bit of this information for Maple. We really need it for the other schools, but we don't know the outcome, and the information will be necessary regardless of the outcome. So the code review and the structural analysis and the phase 1, you know, those will be really important for developers to know in advance, was we want to be able to have flexibility for either scenario. So a developer who can walk in and know that there are no significant environmental issues with the properties would act twofold, either for a redevelopment or for a demolition, because even if you're going to demolish, you need to know exactly what's in those buildings. Right. And then I assume the RFPs are pretty much going to match whatever the conclusion is of the committee. So if the committee says that Maple Street's going to be housing and the building can go, well, then the RFP is going to match that. If it's housing and the building has to stay, then the RFP is going to match that. If it's a parking lot, the RFP is going to mirror whatever comes out of that committee, I assume.
I wouldn't necessarily say so, Tom. I think that, you know, RFPs are basically put out to the public, and we can hope to get what we're hoping to get. But the example of Memorial Hall was their RFP was put out with an inflated value of the building and a better sense of the infrastructure of the building. It was really unknown. You had no idea. They didn't even let you do a walkthrough. So when I went to the bank to get funding on that building, a couple of red flags came up, and so the bank sort of reeled on their first commitment for financing. So it's just to keep that process from happening again. You know, if there's grant money to get a real diagnosis of what those buildings are, then, you know, developers will come through with a clearer idea. I just think that it'll get us a better quality of RFPs if we have the ability to do this legwork.
I agree, Casey. I'm just thinking about the Parsons Street project, which when that RFP went out, it had the restriction that the building had to stay. So that really narrowed the field of respondents to one for the RFP. Yeah. That's my point about it mirroring.
Yeah, I think it's too early to know exactly how that will unfold, but I think you're factually correct that when the RFP is released, we will at that point, so that'll be sometime next spring or next summer, right? We'll, through collective process with the committee and open meeting discussions and things like that, we'll know if it was determined that there is a restriction on the use, i.e. like whether the building has to stay, or I think the ideal scenario would be that there would be flexibility. We don't want to necessarily dictate one way or the other and let the information help inform how that will come forward in terms of a response.
Right.
So I think it's still a little bit too early, but I think I see this as in terms of my role, I see this over the next 2 years as one of the most important projects that I'm going to be focusing my time on. And as I really sat down and kind of mapped out some things, it just really occurred to me that we're good. We're kind of moving forward with the RFP, but at the same time, now's exactly our time to get some funding and do the due diligence. Just so what we're hearing anecdotally from Amherst is going through a school reuse process. It's a totally different scenario. It's one school. This is their second RFP, but what they have found anecdotally is the more information they were able to provide for developers, the better, the more likely that they're going to get a response, and the response is going to be actually like realistic. So that's really the goal, is to get all this information before the RFP is released, so that the committee and the mayor have all this information to make the best decision as to what we ask for going out in the RFP. I think it's a good question. I think it's still a little too early to tell, but the due diligence kept coming up in our conversations with people, generally speaking. Like, they're like, well, did you do phase one yet? We're like, no. Do you have a survey? No. What about a code review? No. So like, we don't want to be saying no to that. You know, we will delay the RFP if we have to, wait a little bit longer to get all those pieces of information in there, because it's just going to help us get a better response.
I agree with what Casey was saying too. There was a real lack of transparency with Memorial Hall that probably would have helped to help a lot of potential buyers.
Great.
Jeff, is there, besides the Future Use Committee, is there any kind of talk about assessing all the city properties as far as potential consolidation? The Council on Aging building, the library, is that even going to be part of the discussion to consider whether or not they should abandon other buildings and keep those buildings, the school buildings?
Or even empty parcels. I think we have quite a few of those.
Yeah. I think for the empty parcels, it's a separate project, right? So I think the subcommittee of the city council has been interested in that. You know, we did the cursory review. They're a lot of them are out in the outskirts, so it's kind of a separate project for the parcels. Your question about the buildings is good. I think it will come up a little bit organically in this process, but it's basically moving one problem to another problem property. Like these buildings, especially the schools, are purpose built for schools. So to push a library, into the building, that's the code review, which is going to trigger, the library. Now the Emily Wilson has a lot of constraints, a lot of issues, and to push them into a school building that's not built as a library, multiple stories and elevators and all those things, like it's going to be kind of hard. So there's some movement going around about the Council on Aging, and if there's anything that can be done with that building, because that's the post office. I think I guess the answer is not necessarily, but I think it's going to come up. I know, like, Paul's on the call. There's been questions about the gymnasium at Pepin. So, like, understanding what impact it would be if the gym is gone, I think that will come up, and we'll have to understand how those user groups would be impacted, and if there's any other place. And we have to figure out the value, especially with the gymnasium and like the cafeteria. Like those are really the unique kind of things in Pepin, that those will come up because they're in that building. So I know I didn't exactly answer your question because I don't really know. I don't think it's necessarily built into this project. Gwen, am I talking too much? Oh, okay.
No, my glasses are very uncomfortable. Other thoughts, questions?
Just one other point that Jeff had touched on, which is we've said from the beginning that the reuse of these 3 schools downtown, whatever it might be, has the potential to be the biggest economic impact since the reuse of the mill buildings. So we've only got one chance to get it right, and with all due respect to the players that were involved before us, we've got it wrong twice with Memorial Hall and with Parsons Street. So hopefully we get it right this time.
Yeah, and I would second that and say that I hope that there's strong attention and strong support from our community to make sure that housing is a really big part of that.
Agreed.
And affordable in particular, but housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff.
That reminds me, I'm sorry. Tomorrow night is the city council is holding their public hearings on 2 zoning amendments that this group has been aware of. So the accessory dwelling units with a building permit is going before city council tomorrow night, and then the multi-family developments with 15% affordable is also up for public hearing tomorrow night. The issue I would say is that the city's budget is also up for hearing tomorrow night, so that will come first, and then those housing amendments will be later. So it's poised to be kind of a long meeting, but it is something that this group has worked on and was really kind of diligent on promoting. And so that the fruits of, I hope that you guys see that, I've been really at these meetings paying attention, and it took a while, but we got a housing production plan done, and now these 2 zoning amendments are moving forward. And then we're I'm ready to switch gears to moving on the school stuff. So that's going to be the next big project for a while.
I think, Jeff, too, I've not that I want to jinx anything, but I have heard from a couple city councilors, and I think those 2 zoning amendments, it sounds like they're pretty positive and going to move through.
Yeah, I'd argue that having them right on the heels of the housing production plan and having kind of the momentum is really helpful. And they're not like the 80. Yeah, I agree. We haven't heard a lot of concerns about them, and I think that's great. That's good.
I think it did get unanimous support from the planning board, which is a good sign.
Well, I remember, Jeff, when you came to us and you said, if we have this housing production plan, we'll have the data we need to point to when we want to make these changes. And now we have it, and we went through it, and it's all working out. So very happy.
He's all about the data.
Yeah.
So important. It's not the only thing, but it is a big thing. I'd like to take an opportunity to congratulate City Planner Jeff Bagg, because he has added a person to his department to help carry the load of planning, because Easthampton is a powerhouse and now they can get more done. And I think that's great. So congratulations, Jeff.
Thank you. And that's been 3 years in the making. So it's been a lot, like trying to build up the support, demonstrate what the planning department's doing. Yeah, so it's Curtis Weeman. He's a second assistant planner, and it's pretty much transitioned over. So he's doing all the planning board, zoning board of appeals. He's talking to applicants and developers and he's really giving them the attention that they deserve to do that. Jamie's kind of going to shift to more focused on what she's already been doing, which is housing, CPA, and community development block grant. And then I'm trying, my last real step is to make the conservation agent full-time, so that she can be split between the Conservation Commission and then start doing energy related or sustainability and open space projects. So that's kind of that's been my vision from day one, to kind of round out the planning department. So things are happening. Great.
And Jeff, just real quick too, Gwen mentioned housing. I understand the Cottage Street Motors project is getting ready to move forward. And it's a little bit of a change. You might have seen the design on Facebook. They are gonna take down the Jim's package store building as part of it. And that'll be 19, I believe, housing units, and 2, 3, 4, I forget the number of 4 affordable. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if they can make this happen in this climate, that's going to be amazing with the cost of the cost of construction. But yeah, that's a great project.
Tom, you said the liquor store is coming down?
Yes, they're going to move it to, those of you that are old enough to remember, the yellow building behind it used to be Harley Davidson before they moved. They're going to move the package store to that yellow building behind it.
Great.
Good. I was wondering what they were doing. They're emptying that thing out.
Yeah. Package store.
Outstanding. Some changes, some good sometimes, and I like it. Anything else from the planning department, or questions or anything along those lines? Hearing none. So now is the time for discussing any further information we might have. Casey, suggestions regarding social media, EDIC presence, logistics. Jeff, we've had a couple of conversations now about how to do this again, because we've had conversations about this, I think, each year for 3 years. So Casey, do you have any thoughts to share today?
Well, just there was a little bit of a flack on social media about a city council member who is the moderator of a page, and the bias, or I'm not on social media so much, and it sort of made me look at the social media policy that the city has on their website. So I think it's more about us coming up with consistent content. I know the planning board has a very good Facebook presence, and just talks about the projects that they're doing in a very sort of concise, informative way. So I think more of it has to be from us to define what the content is, and are we promoters of business individually? Are we promoters of the city, or are we promoters of each other, or what? I mean, it's a little bit of a definition and categorizing what directions we think are the right and what things we should avoid, I guess. Because I think being vanilla is probably our best case scenario, and not be objective in criticism, and be more educational awareness stuff.
Yeah, I think we're probably amplifiers rather than generators.
Yeah. So that's we sort of got into this like, oh, well, where do we go with direction of content? I think it needs to not come from Kim and I, but it needs to come from the group to determine, I like the stuff that Mo does as far as the ribbon cutting and the celebration of business as something that we just simply copy and paste, whether or not it's something like the planning board does and we simply copy and paste that kind of stuff. So it's whether or not, like you said, we're generators or amplifiers. And if we're amplifiers, what kind of content do we find to share? Or do we simply share our meetings and agendas and content more to educate the public on what it is that we as a group do?
I think we could do both, and I think that if we could frame anything, you're right. We're going to be boosters, not really generators. Though I think that we can generate content once in a while. But I think that if we could frame whatever we do, if we could frame it as an economic boon to the city, like I'm thinking about even the Easthampton Board of Health shared the dashboard for the COVID numbers, and even sharing that, it's an economic boon because people see, at least from our Facebook, that we're ahead of the curve on vaccinations, and maybe people will want to come here more. So I think if we could get a good frame on things, that's helpful. Sorry about the phone.
Something that might work into the same discussion is one of the city councilors has started to ask committees to come to a city council meeting to describe what they do. And I don't know how that's gotten distributed. It started with the Commission on Disability, kind of a low key committee that the city has, and they went into a presentation and it helped draw up some interest in what that committee does. I do expect that to come your way. It's not a project I'm involved with, but I'm aware that I think Councilor Rothschild was going to be doing that. And I could have swore I saw from the City of Easthampton's Facebook page, so that's kind of like the official city page, that they were doing a little, hey, this is the X, Y, and Z committee. This is what they do. Have you ever heard of them? And here's what they do. So that might be one just first step that, as this group, a little exercise to kind of be ready for something, those two things to help debut, kind of like re-debut what the EDIC does. I apologize. That just kind of came to me in this discussion. I just remembered some of that stuff.
That's real easy for us to do, Jeff. We just send the chair.
That's what the chair does.
Yeah,
that's all fair. But I guess since Casey, I think you're right. I mean, if we're going to be 95% resharers, or is this something that we want to pursue if we can't think? And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but we should still revisit the question if we want to just be resharers.
Well, I think sharing is not a bad thing, just because I know that people always react afterwards. Why did the Dunkin' Donuts get approved? When did that mural go up? Gee, I didn't know this happened. So I think the people that follow the content of the things they're interested in, they're aware of, but they're oblivious to other things that they are concerned about or would like to be interested in. They're just not part of that group, or their friends aren't part of that group. It's sort of like the Easthampton City Arts does a lot, and they, do their promotion for the spot lots or whatever that is. It would have been nice for us to have another element of sharing content that the city does. So I don't know. It's just that way. I think just sharing or regenerating is a positive thing.
Okay, so you're of the position that if we could increase our shares by 5%, it's worth it, or something like that. I think I agree with that. I'm just trying to figure out.
Especially if those things are easy. You know what I mean? If there was the planning department, the Easthampton's Facebook, the city arts, whatever this other content the city puts out on social media, to help share that, and try to get in with maybe the real estate numbers, and play with other things that may interest other people besides just regurgitating other information.
Sure. No, I'm with you on that. I'm wondering if we can get some sort of budget for advertising or promoting our posts. Because I think that would actually, because it doesn't take much. A few $100s a year is a tremendous boon to posting these things. But I guess that's for down the road. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's further down the road. So Mo, you've got your hand up. What are your thoughts?
So I'm just curious to, social media really is about consistency as well. And I'm just curious as to whom among us will want to be really surfing and checking and consistently posting. I don't mean to, I'm just playing devil's advocate because it's a lot of work. And just to share that, just from the Chamber's perspective, it's a lot of work. And it doesn't seem like we put out a lot, but you're always on the lookout, and you're always trying to make sure, like, for instance, we are always making sure that we're watching our members because we like to push that stuff out, but then you don't want to focus too much on any one, you want to spread the love. And so just FYI is all I'm saying.
Well, one of the things that it just occurs to me is like the Google Docs, we all have access to that. And is there a way for us to potentially put content on that as individuals and then collectively give a vote, thumbs up, thumbs down, if that's something that we think is shareable? Because if it's in a simple document that, Kim is here 5 days a week, she spends 4 or 5 hours in the office, and she's got a half an hour to putz around. If she simply opened that page up every Tuesday and saw that we agreed on 3 contents to share or post, that she could simply handle that. So if we, collectively reviewed that once a week, we had a document. I don't know what open law meeting is about sharing that kind of document, but say we found something that we thought would be prevalent, that we simply put that into the file, and then we all at some point looked at it and then said, that's not us, or yes, that's absolutely us, and you give it a thumbs up, and then you have 2 things to share that randomly you look at in the course of the week, and then come Tuesday, she opens up that page and says, okay, we have 3 things to post. I don't know. It just seems like there may be an easy way to do it or to try it.
I think you just outlined the perfect way to do it.
Okay.
That sounds great.
It does also seem plausible to me that, because we've talked about Kim being an enthusiastic citizen member of our volunteer EDIC, unappointed by the mayor, but very enthusiastic. And I like that idea. And also, it's hard for me to imagine being that attentive throughout a given week. Not that I couldn't change my practice, but it would take a radical habit change. And I'm wondering if there are just topics that we know we would want to highlight, and if there were a way to work with Kim to structure it so that she, on a weekly or more frequently basis, was looking at the pages of X, Y, and Z city pages, plus the chamber, plus here are some mass live things related to things we know that are happening in Easthampton. And maybe we have some, like here on these 4 particular themes, we want to highlight these kinds of stories or these upcoming meetings and have some little tagline about here's why it matters for economic development. And then we can have conversations. Like I would love to have Kim be here and talk with us about that. I think she came to one meeting a while ago, but I don't know. That's another idea. Tom.
Just one other thought that comes to mind. If you recall, maybe it was the beginning of the year, maybe it was last fall, when we had a conversation with Jeff about projects and things, Dunkin' Donuts and the project on Lavelle Road, and how they might be great economic development projects, but they tend to get more negative reaction than positive. And Jeff said if we were going to stand up and stand behind those projects, to hold on for the ride, because sometimes it'll be a rough ride. And I think if we could use this platform to try to get positive turnout to some of these processes, if you will. So Dunkin' Donuts, for example, I don't know if anybody showed up at a meeting speaking in favor of that, other than the applicants. What if 3 of us from EDIC showed up at that meeting and or gutted out on social media that this was even happening. And are there supporters out there? Are there advocates? There's been some negative stuff on social media about the Cottage Street project. We're talking about being so positive, but yet there's some negative comments out there. Now, thankfully, they're all the way through the permitting process, so that's probably a shovel-ready project. But Casey said, hold on. I'm sorry, Jeff said, hold on for the ride. There are going to be more projects that we're going to need to hopefully try to, through social media, garner some public support for, to show up at these meetings to speak in favor.
So one of the things about the Dunkin' Donuts is a perfect example. The thread, somebody shared the article in the newspaper or something that said it got approval, and 20, 30 comments about how did this happen, blah, 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 blah. And I simply replied that because it was zoned based on the master plan of the work that the volunteers and city members were simply following the codes and the zoning that we set out before. We wanted business to generate taxes in certain areas, and that was zone business. And it totally shut up the whole thread. And somebody just said, perfect way of explaining it. It made it clear to understand that this is how you get involved. You can't criticize afterwards. And if you're not happy, get involved. So I think like nip it in the bud, Tom, is what you're saying, is get more involved, be out ahead of things. And that way too, developers might be like, whoa, there's going to be a big backlash between this. I got to either sweeten the pot, or this is just not going to fly with the public.
And even when a zone change is involved, it might be reasonable. I mean, I'm thinking of the cannabis application for the Stop and Shop location. I spoke to some counselors after that was shut down, and they said, maybe if we'd heard some of this at the meeting, we might have voted differently. So, because no one showed up, it was only the abutters. And I think if we hear about that stuff from Jeff and we get it out, and some of us show up and we get a broader constituency, if you will, to show up, I think that helps the regulatory bodies in this town when they hear some positive feedback on these projects.
I think you're right. And I think that the kind of conversation we've been having about this over time has gotten more nuanced, and I think that that's great. And also, it's detailed, and I think we need some more time to figure out what is our plan. So for now, trusting that Josh has taken good notes, and alongside my little handwritten notes, my proposal is that for our next meeting, I will write up some, like a little logistical and content proposal. There might be multiple options to choose from, so that we have something concrete to talk about and say yes, no, maybe so that we can then get into how do we actually make this happen in calendar year 21. Does that work for people?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, Tom, do you have any updates on the weekend bus? The last we heard was that there's a liability in who can drive the bus.
I have not gotten any additional information, Gwen. Not so much the liability, but that the requirement that the driver needs to be a city employee. What I'm trying to find out is if it could be a member of an appointed board. So any one of us, for example. I think I shared the story that when we were taking a tour of the housing for part of the housing production plan, Jeff, for example, drove the bus. Now, he scared the hell out of us because he kept looking back at us while he was driving, but Jeff drove the bus as a city employee. Could people have appointed boards? And Jeff, frankly, I'm not even really sure where to go to get that answer. I guess I was going to ask the mayor, but she's going to turn around and ask someone else.
So let me just say that when we were doing, we had someone else driving a bus at some point. It was Peter from the Board of Assessors. Remember that, Jeff and Gwen? And that was specifically to protect that liability, or to have that liability protection as well.
Are you talking about a bus that would be like a trolley kind of thing? Is that what, to transport people to, like, there
like
might
Viper
be,
too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, Jeff. We were
Viper
talking
too.
about the Council on Aging bus, and Brendan was fine with us using it, but he thought there was some restriction on who could drive it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything magical to say. I mean, I think you probably get it to the mayor, because the mayor is the best person who's authorized to send it to like the city attorney, if that's who's going to end up looking at it.
Okay, I will follow up with the mayor, Gwen.
Who manages the city's insurance? Is it the treasurer? That person might know.
Yeah.
The other concept, I think that's probably a bigger scope, is if it is privately operated, if it's a business-sponsored scenario, which case it's a lot of work to figure out, what businesses would want to be involved. But if it's benefiting the mills and the cultural district and Main Street and whatever, whether or not it's the winery or Park Hill, or of something privately, and doing something that way as opposed to publicly connections.
Yeah, so you're saying something like hiring King Ward or something like that privately, yes, and they handle all the liability. And yeah.
I guess the only reason we came up with the Council on Aging bus was probably from a cost perspective, but just to back up on that too, Jeff, one of the things we talked about was providing transportation that might go from venue to venue on a Friday or Saturday night. So this bus might make a loop every half hour that goes from Cottage Street to Millside Park to wherever, Main Street, and picks up and drops off folks, so they're not having to get back in their cars and drive all across town. But this bus might pick up 10 or 15 people at a whack and be available, say, from 7 to 10 to drive folks around town. That was the backdrop to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big concept. It's pretty ambitious. Half joking and half serious. Maybe we circle right back to EDIC's social media presence, and EDIC could be the key promoter of that bus, because you're gonna have to promote it and have every single piece of literature and access to scheduling and really making that seem really fun and cool. So maybe that's what the EDIC would do.
Well, one of the things I thought about this is that as much as transportation is one issue, I think parking is another issue that we potentially could look at. I don't think it's an issue up here on Main Street. I don't know what it's like at the mills around the breweries, but Cottage Street is a tough thing. And if we simply took on, I mean, this falls into the Wayfinding stuff, but better parking clarity for Cottage Street to make Payson Avenue really publicly known as a parking venue, Maple Street at night as a publicly known spot. And then if it's that people start to get like, wow, they're really using that lot, be sort of like, can we now introduce education into, oh, you can park here, but get a ride to the mills. Oh, you can park here, but still get a ride to Main Street. So people just, start with the parking or have that go hand in hand with whatever sort of form of trolley system we look at.
Yeah, I think I still have the screen share ability. Casey, I think I texted you with this. The recommendation would be someone from this group probably maybe to talk to the owners and operators of the Keystone Mill and the Boylston Room. So I just found this on my, let me see. This is fun, really. Just a quick deviation. I know we're short on time, but can everyone see this? This is the Boylston Rooms.
All right.
The wedding trolley. So they own this.
Yep.
Awesome.
But so they probably know some of the logistics, but where to go from here, don't know. But and they have trolleys. I never seen this until just now. I was fishing around for information, but
it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, so they use that for their wedding. So that's like their
Yeah.
wedding, you know, their
Yeah,
wedding. But it's a trolley that exists in Easthampton under someone's ownership in Easthampton. So maybe maybe there's a little something there to build off of. That was what I texted. Casey, I wanted a picture of that day. I sent you a message, but I couldn't. My phone was not working properly.
I forgot about that.
That seems to me like that's a pretty low-hanging fruit to start with. What days can we rent that? And say like, wow, they're busy on the Sunday, but we have it for Friday and Saturday of this month. And we say, what's the rental cost on that with the driver and liability insurance? And okay, so it's a 5-6 hour window that we have the access to that bus. And we say, okay, it's $100 an hour. Where do we find the $600 for that? And then we hit up, the businesses or general sponsors, the banks and the Nicky D's and the people that Pink and Paris, for a little banner and promotion on it to just say this is good news for Easthampton. So that might be an easier scenario to start with, is just pick a couple of dates that we can just rent the driver and the van and go from there. And if it seems like it has positive feedback, then say like, great. If we could take it to the next level and have it more consistent, that would be a great goal.
Yeah, agreed. I guess my only other thought is that there has to be a reason for people to want to go to Millside Park, or, are there events going on where we would look at a specific weekend? I know people might be going to the breweries anyway, but is there a reason why people want to get to Millside Park? We offer the trolley from the Payson Avenue parking lot to Millside Park, or to Arts in the Orchards or what have you. There's an event going on, to your point, Casey. So we're not going to just say this bus is available every Saturday night, because some Saturday nights in Easthampton, believe it or not, could be dead. You know. So
no, I think that it is tying in, and I've sort of lost base with ECA as I'm not on the board anymore. But Art Walk, I assume, is coming back. Jeffrey, is that?
Yeah, it's been on the perpetual list to get Pascagoula here, but yeah, September was the Art Walk. The Resurrect Art Walk was picked by the group for September.
Okay, so and that's the thing. It's sort of like that seems like a pretty easy one to know that we are going to have plenty of foot traffic for it. And is there going to be another spotlight series, or is there going to be another series of outdoor music events that's happening?
Yeah, my understanding, from talking to Pascagoula, there's going to be a gap in the middle of the summer, and then in the fall, the Spotlight there'll be a couple more events at the Spotlight, and there'll be, my understanding, hopefully I'm not spreading rumors, but Mill Pond Live, may come back, and, we would hope things like Food Truck Friday, so it's really, I'm hesitant to send it to like Pascagoula. She's got a lot going on, but there is going to be a synergy with events, and that would really be what really makes this kind of a fun thing to draw people who live in Easthampton, but people from outside Easthampton to try it. For a lot of it will hinge on actually talking to the owners of the trolley too, but
sure. All right, we're going to have to figure out the routes on a continuous basis, I think.
I have a question. In all the discussions we've had about this, it's a great idea, but have we identified the funding for this? Who's going to, are the drivers going to be a volunteer? Who's going to pay for the gas, that type of thing?
Well, Josh, that's why we had started with the Council on Aging bus, because we were hoping there would be no cost and we would get volunteers to drive. Okay. If we start looking at the Keystone shuttle, or whatever they call it, then the question of finances comes into play. And to Casey's point, or I forget who made the point, but if we can get a couple of sponsors and they can have a banner put on the side of it, and we say this is going to be around town on Friday night from 6 to 10, and there's going to be 3,000 people that are going to see your banners, I suppose that's a selling point. I think the place to start is to find out, number one, will Keystone be up for that, and what's the cost? Jeff, do you know any contacts there about the trolley? Is it Peter?
No, I would probably go with Erin Whitmer. She's the the Whitmers own the building, and then I think she's operating the Boylston Rooms, which is that's the wedding venue.
Yes,
Well,
definitely Erin. Yep.
Do you have any contact information for her?
For
You could
Erin?
just, Erin,
Hang on, I think,
you could just email it to me, Mo, or something.
yeah, it's on the chamber directory. I can just,
I'd be happy to track her down and try to talk to her about it.
hang on.
Also, I have a comment. I know there was said earlier an idea thrown that maybe it would be like an adjustable schedule, or like on certain weekends, maybe there would be a stop that maybe wasn't there on all the other weekends, depending on what events were going on. But I do just wonder, like, how important it is to kind of have consistency so that people know, like, okay, if I want to get together with my friends and we're all going to park at Millside, each Friday night and go around town, like that's always, that's going to be an option. Whereas just knowing that it won't always be there enough to make some people be like, oh, that's not an option for me because I don't have certainty. I don't have consistency there.
Yeah,
That's a great point. I think we should definitely have at least anchor stops that will always be there.
Yeah, and I think one way to potentially handle this is to really just be call this a pilot, and maybe you target 3 weekends this fall, and just pilot it as these 3 weekends, because I think it's going to be really hard to ramp up to this is happening every weekend. I think other cities and towns have done this. I think Worcester, definitely not same as Easthampton. And especially with their minor league baseball stadium. I spent some time in Worcester, and there had always been this discussion of a trolley, but they had the stadium, just came into town magically, constructed, and they got the trolley operating. But I think before that, they didn't have that critical mass. I think a pilot, pitching it as a pilot program for a couple weekends this fall, just to see how it goes.
Definitely, I'm sorry, I definitely would consider that the pilot situation as a really good way to introduce, and just to get a feel for this, to see if that's something that long-term you want to be involved with, because just sharing anecdotally, I can recall that the Amherst bid had a trolley also, and it would go from UMass to downtown, and the bid was in charge of that, and it was a gigantic challenge as far as trolleys breaking down and that sort of stuff. So not that would be the case with this. That looks like a pretty fine trolley, but just that sort of stuff kept that bid director out of her mind, just so you, FYI. And then can I put the Boylston Rooms phone number in the chat? Is that okay to do here?
Yeah. It's public information, sure.
Okay, so there you go.
Thanks.
But yeah, she really struggled with that, and it was 24/7 nightmare for her for a long time. So I don't know.
That's why I think Jeffrey's plan to if Art Walk is going to happen September, October, and November, we know those are busy dates. It's guaranteed. Those are always my best Fridays, and that's when there's content. So we don't have to look to see and find content. And we know that Arts in the Orchard is going to be happening then too. So I think that has a lot of legs potentially. You know what I mean? There's content, there's demand, and the Arts in the Orchard has parking issues. So they're thrilled that they can have people dropped off there and picked up there. So I think that a pilot program for those 3 Saturdays, Fridays, September, October, and November are realistically achievable, and will give us an idea whether or not this is something we'd want to continue in the spring and summer of the next year.
Yeah, and I understand what Chris and Paul are saying about consistency, but my only concern is, that's why I like this pilot idea, is if we're paying for this trolley, we're going to pay no matter how many people are riding it. You'd hate to see 3 people get on the bus, and as opposed to 15 or 20 people get on it. So I love the idea of promoting it through Casey's social media efforts, promoting it, and as a pilot, and for those Fridays in those 3 months, I think that would be great. I'll follow up with Aaron.
Love that.
Kelly Ritchie is also somebody that might sort of feel that she's the building manager, and she's also the head of the licensing board. So she's aware of city dynamics and those kind of things.
Okay.
All right. So now with 3 minutes left, that's not how you do math. With 7 minutes left, we get to talk about some productivity on draft strategy and ordinance language for vacant storefronts. So I don't think we're going to talk about the ordinance language today. There's too much of it. I will say, hi Mo, what would you like to say?
I just wanted, I noticed something on this, the piece that Paul put together, the letter out to the businesses. So when we get to that point.
Great. So we have two documents that have been created by members of the EDIC. We have a Google Sheet that lists a select few of the vacant storefronts that are in our main business districts. They have some useful information in them. I added a column that listed what they were most recently known as, if there's not signage there currently. What was my other criterion for that? I don't remember. Anyway, I added one. And I think I added D&D Motor, which is at the Rotary deal.
Some of that, a lot of businesses on there too. Thank you, whoever did that.
Oh, good work. So this is a draft that I think is functional for our purposes. Why did I close it? That's my question. I didn't close it. Look at that. There we go. There's lots in there. Good job, guys. So this, I think, is, I think we will want to choose from some of these to talk about who we want to, when we finalize our initial letter, who we want to share that with. Because I don't think that we're going to say, yeah, let's talk to all 17. Which isn't 17 because Mr. Moriarty owns a lot of them. So
there are a couple of you who have a lot.
Yeah. Casey, you want to say something?
Well, I think Paul's letter is draft is good. The one thing it didn't really mention is that we're just sort of mirroring what other communities are doing. So it doesn't seem like we're just sort of targeting randomly. And I think that it's pretty vanilla and pretty clear. It's not threatening. That if we send it to somebody who is actually doing their due diligence, they're not going to be offended, and simply say, "Great, you have qualified to be off the list." So that's one of the things I think, that if it's the letter is just informational, it's non-threatening, and that we could put it to all of them, and if it's not applicable, then we simply say that, okay, well, you're not applicable. Thanks for understanding. And know that we are trying to help fill vacant tenants and vacancies, and we're also trying to beautify what is blight.
Yep.
So if we work on just the letter first, then we can mail this out to just about anybody. If I got one as a property owner here in town, I'd be like, oh, this doesn't apply for me. Okay.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I'm going to share it. There it is. So, yeah, my only initial thought is that we could mention art installations as a feature of this, but we haven't gotten into all that we want to include in how we think about this yet. So I think that this is an excellent draft. This is a non-blank piece of paper, and I love that. It's my favorite thing about it.
I agree with that. I think we need a little bit more. We need to offer a bit more guidance on how they can get in touch with us, aside from coming to a meeting, because I'm sure that a lot of people aren't going to want to just make a call or send a letter or send an email even.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a quick question, and within the second, just a great letter, but in the second paragraph, where it says the city is considering new requirements for property owners, is the city is considering this, or are we bringing this forward and the EDIC is considering this?
We are the city.
Yeah,
I think
on behalf of the city.
No,
I think so. You're both right, but I think that without the consent of the mayor and other people's knowledge, I think that should probably say the EDIC for now. I think you're safe if it says the EDIC is considering new requirements. I think it has not moved far enough along. I think it probably shouldn't say the city yet.
I agree. I think it also should say that EDIC is considering proposing new requirements, if we want to be very clear.
Yep. I think those are good recommendations.
Because I think it could get some people prematurely excited about things.
And if we put that we're considering proposing, it might even bring them into the fold and helping with the proposal.
Or showing up at a meeting and saying, I don't want these guys determining what to do with my building. Tell them to shut the hell up. You know what I mean?
I had one comment, if it's okay. So, Paul, I think this is great. So you're getting the kudos that you deserve. I think we're just wordsmithing. Welcome to the fun place of getting wordsmithed. So I tried to put myself in the shoes of getting the letter, right? So if I asked what other, so it's the first line really, the EDIC is considering steps to assist in the reduction. If someone asks what other steps is the EDIC considering or taking, do we have any other steps to make that a plural statement? And so that was, I think I wrote a quick note to Gwen, and because I didn't know if I was hoping to make it, but do we want to have a couple other kind of items that we might be able to respond to help, because we're trying to help, right, with the reduction of vacant and blighted. My thought, and I think Gwen said it, was how, I don't know exactly how Pascalina did it, but she got agreement from one landlord to put up art in a window. And Casey, is that what maybe ECC is doing? So maybe that's one other thing. I just want to be able to have the team have a response to someone who kind of might bristle up and say, well, what else are you talking about? What other steps is included in that one statement? So
I think that if we were clear that we are thinking, in addition to this last sentence of the second paragraph, while yes, we are considering an annual registration fee and or quarterly building inspections, along those lines, we're also looking at art installations or ways to make to vitalize
right
these spaces. I can't remember the vocab you city planners use. It's always so elegant about how you make things feel lived in and pleasant to be in.
But also help market their space.
So marketing steps and art. So if we added those things, then I think it would cohere more as there are legitimate steps.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I'll stop talking.
I think anything along those lines I think that would help just round it out a little bit.
I think this letter is the first step, correct? And when the heavy-handed part that Paul left out, which is fine, because to Casey's point, we don't want to offend anyone here. The next step is there's potential ongoing penalties involved if you don't do something, right? Like Arlington, if we decide to go that route. So the bad stuff comes later. The first step is come talk to us. Let's talk about how we might help you. And one of the ways that you might help us is the art installation. But there is another big shoe to drop here, Jeff, which is ongoing quarterly, monthly, annual fines, if you will, for not doing anything. To that point, though, Jeff, I don't know what our hammer is when certain property owners just ignore this letter.
Well, that's the next step. I mean, that's when we said that's when the city steps in.
Yeah, this letter, I think,
We're the good cop.
I think this letter is just a courtesy, to be honest. I think that we're sending this letter out as a courtesy while we draft an ordinance that hopefully gets passed by council, and in that ordinance we'll have steps that will include a letter like this when we catch someone who hasn't registered.
Yeah.
And like
This letter is for research, and then there will be one similar but not the same should the ordinance pass. Mo, you have something to share?
Well, I'm wondering if it might behoove us to dedicate the time, some of the time to actually go through and draft up some sort of
Next steps.
wording, right? What is it they want to do, and what does that all look like? What does this program look like, including, the fines and the steps and all that sort of stuff, right? And it's a pre-version, a draft. And then that helps us craft this letter to say, this is how far we have gotten. This is what we are thinking. We would like your input and your help, right? Because that's what we're asking for in this letter. So if we have that piece sort of outlined, it's just an outline, so we have something to work with.
Yeah, I think they're probably parallel, and we came up with what we think is, we didn't, with the exception of the minutes from the June 1st meeting, we don't have a document that in very formal language outlines exactly what our plan is. But Cassie, do you want to weigh in here? Yes, I see you.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
No. I'm sorry. I'm offering to draft it.
Heyo. Okay. Yeah, I think these things operate in parallel. So getting much clearer about what we think is going to happen, which is not the same as what will our ordinance say. Right. I think it's a little less formal than the ordinance. So that would be ideal, Cassie, and then we can share that together. So the enthusiasm about this was such in May that we had an interstitial meeting in between meetings about this topic. Do we want to continue that enthusiasm and do something similar in 2 weeks? Or are we now in summer and that is asking a lot?
I'd be there.
I would be there. I think we're all on the same page and we're all close. I think we all want to see just a little bit more information and clarity into it. And I think we all see that. I think we're all on the same page. I don't think we need all of us there. I just think we need to bounce off the language and the inclusion on it. You know what I mean? But I think we don't need the whole group.
Okay.
And I'm available.
Okay.
I'm there.
I would request, though, that if we have this, what was the word, interstitial meeting,
Love that.
that we come up with a hard schedule we try to follow, because doing an ordinance this long with many people, we can just get analysis paralysis pretty quickly. We should just figure out a date we want to submit this to someone. I think that would help.
Exactly. Say the draft is completed by the next meeting 2 weeks from here. The following 2 weeks we'll achieve this, and then by 8 weeks we'll have something that we feel like we can wrap up and take to city council or to the next stage. But I like Chris's concept of sort of like figuring out the timeline and getting there.
Well, we're 6 minutes over our initial meeting end time. So here's my proposal is that Cassie has volunteered to draft at least the structure. You do not have to draft the ordinance language, but the structure of what we're talking about would be ideal to have access to. In 2 weeks, if people are amenable, a subcommittee, which may consist of a large number of us, large enough that we have to call it a major recorded meeting, will happen on the 29th. And at that point, we talk about what is our self-imposed deadline, and then we work backward from there to decide what our steps are.
Quinn,
That's good.
Yes, ma'am.
Quinn, project plans are my life. Would you like me to draft a project plan?
Cool.
Project plan sounds great. Mo, do you have any concerns about this? I see your chat message.
Excuse me?
I'm talking to Mo.
Oh,
I guess taking our time with this, I feel like would be a prudent thing to do. I don't know, something like this, we want to make sure that it's right, and I'd rather have it right than rush to be done, because we want to get some.
I agree 100%, but I'm not saying we should rush it or anything. I just think we should be cognizant of analysis paralysis. And there are a couple of things that I think I've painfully learned is that the city solicitor is going to get involved and change everything about the ordinance. And then the same thing is going to happen with the city council subcommittee, ordinance subcommittee, and then the city council potentially. So it's like we can just write a draft. I'm not advocating for this, but even if we wrote a draft, it would get chopped up. Even if we wrote something perfect, it's going to get chopped up and diced and changed. And
I think, Chris,
all that.
I think the effort is just not to drag our heels.
When I mentioned, Chris, that I had reached out to a city councilor to ask about process here, and all we need is a city councilor to shepherd this ordinance through the city council. One of the things he said to me was that it's very helpful if you're mirroring something that's already being done somewhere else, as opposed to reinventing the wheel. So that may cut down. I agree with you. The lawyer is going to justify $200 an hour probably, but I think it's going to help it shepherd through the city council when we refer to 2 or 3 other communities that have already done this and 2 or 3 others that are contemplating it. Like she told us, I believe Northampton's looking into it.
Yeah, I just want to echo a lot of this. I do think, though, that this time looking at Easthampton specific things is well spent. So to what Tom just said, there's a good way to do copy and paste and there's a bad way. And the bad way is to just copy and paste and send it. We had a recent encounter with that with the solar ordinance where it just was like, it didn't fit at all with the rest of the things happening around it. Whereas you're doing a lot of the due diligence now, which I think is good, and I think it's going to pay off. I just wanted to say something real quick too, because it's kind of occurring to me in real time. But we talked about the local rapid recovery plan, and Mo and I are teamed up on that, and we are going to be coming up with a list of projects. And I'm trying to balance the stick with some carrot. So I think that we continue down the path you just laid out and have your special meeting. I will not be able to attend, but at the same time that we can build a carrot, I think, out of this, which is when you see the presentation, there are things that the city can do to beautify streetscapes, so the public realm, but there was also this notation about the private realm. And having identified this as the stick, if we can identify the carrot along the way and keep reiterating that maybe we want to build up some funding for people who want to make improvements but can't afford to do it, like that would be the carrot end of this. And if we can tie this to COVID-19 somehow, we could come out of our LRRP project with a project saying like, find funding to support facade improvements for businesses. Like, so we could do both. But I'm really cognizant of like the flashback reaction we might get from property owners to say, I don't have money to do this. So that, maybe Mo and I can talk about that. We're still a couple months from that, having that list, but that came up in that meeting. I'm going to send you guys all a link as soon as I have it, but it would be great to watch that 45-minute kind of presentation on this, because you'll see the connection, I think, between these 2 projects.
Yeah. That's really an excellent reminder. There's a lot to be shared between these 2 efforts. And I think that what I like about the enthusiasm that we have around this and the willingness to have an interstitial meeting is that we get, if you just do EDIC on the basis that it's traditionally scheduled, you get 12 hours a year to make change. That's not enough. So I like that we're making time to have these conversations. I think that that's good. And we can set ourselves a self-imposed deadline. and then you just slap yourself around a little bit if you don't make your deadline because things changed and you did the best you could with the information you had at the time. So I think that if we operate from that perspective and we also understand that we care a lot about this and for a lot of different reasons, I think that that's worthwhile for our city and this group. We're going to end this meeting. Do I have a motion to be done?
A motion to quit.
Great.
Adjourn.
All in favor, holler aye.
Aye.
Let's go away. I will send you a meeting piece of information that is well titled in an email subject line for 6:29. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Jeff,
You
Jeff,
all.
is there anything you have to share now about the LRR? Is there anything for us to look at?
I've been trying to get the slides that were presented. This was last Wednesday, so this or Thursday, the slides and then the video. As soon as I just need to get them posted on our website, and then I'll send them off. I have been trying to get that stuff.
Okay.
So it should be coming today or tomorrow.
Awesome.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks.
You too.
Here.
Bye.